Iowa State women's basketball just made another key addition in the transfer portal, and in my opinion, this really legitimately puts them as Big 12 title contenders for next season. We're talking about it today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every single day and making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcasting platform, be sure to hit subscribe so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we're starting off with the key addition to the women's basketball team and why I really actually think this team could be a contender next season. Actually, this is a huge addition. Then we're going to talk about the breaking story over the weekend for football and the gambling kind of situation. What happened and what does this mean moving forward? Then finally, a feel-good story to round out today's episode with Cade Kelderman getting on scholarship. We'll break down all of that, so don't go anywhere. But before we get that far, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So, Evangelia Paulk is how is said, it is pronounced. Transfer from Wofford College is headed to Iowa State, and Iowa State got a lot better. This is huge. The Jada Williams transfer from Arizona, I thought was monumental. This one right here, also kind of in that same category. I will say, obviously, Wofford not on the same, not in the Power Four like Arizona, but Evangelia Paulk is, a dominant force in the last 2 years that she's been playing at Wofford. In this last season, was the SoCon Player of the Year, SoCon Defensive Player of the Year, all SoCon First Team, and SoCon All Defensive Team. Obviously, SoCon being the is it Southern Conference? Oosh, we all know what SoCon is, but for some reason I am blanking. I can pull that up here in a second. But last season averaged 12.8 points, 8.4 rebounds, 1.9 assists, and shot 37.4% from the field. Very solid numbers there. Obviously, taking a look at the Wofford team statistics, stands out in every category, a leader in everything but assists and blocks. So very much making her mark on this team. Team did pretty well on this season. I believe they lost. This is the SoCon. I think it's the semis that they lost, and then they got third in the standings for the regular season, going 8-6 in the conference, 17-12 overall. Out of South Carolina, so that's a pretty cool spot to be. Not as cool as Ames, Iowa, which is why she made the transfer over. Of course, we all know it was due to location there. I think the way this team is shaping up is very promising. Obviously, Audie Crooks coming back, Addie Brown, and what we saw her do last year. Yeah, we've got a few Iowa State kind of players leaving with Kelsey Jones and Lily Hansford also hit the portal. But I think this addition of Paulk and Williams, I think these are going to be major. I think we've got a lot of scoring now. I did also see that Paulk was the second player ever to get a triple-double at Wofford. She did it against Samford towards the end of the season. Not very end of the season, but certainly in that latter third. Very, very impressive feat there. I believe it was with steals as well. Points, assists, and steals was the stat line, I think. And then looking at her campaign as a whole, started every single game that she has been a part of, which is impressive because obviously as a true freshman, you got to be doing that. 59 games total over the 2 seasons. We've got 10.6 points, 7.6 rebounds, and 1.5 assists per game. I think the steals stands out to me, kind of what I talked about with Jada or Miss Williams and her ability to just turn up the intensity, crank up kind of the vibes of these games, because there are times when I felt like Iowa State didn't really have a ton of energy at sometimes, not always, but definitely at sometimes last season. And I think that this team is going to benefit from just cranking it to 100 at all times. Between Jada Williams and what I've talked about already that we're going to get from her now with Paulk, I really think she can kind of do the same thing. I saw highlights from a game where she had back-to-back blocks with under like 10 seconds, just absolutely imprinting herself onto the game. And that's what Iowa State needs, right? Audie Crooks can make her presence very much known. Everybody remembers the 40-point game 2 years ago. And that was kind of when everyone, I mean, obviously Iowa State fans, we knew who she was, but nationally really got a lot of attention in that game. And we've seen it since where she can go for 30 and really kind of take over, especially if our opponent is just not adjusting to her style of play. Addie Brown, I think, can do the same, but we didn't really have a lot of takeover players. I think Jada Williams and Evangelia Paulk can do the same, that exact thing for Iowa State, which is what you need. You need a little bit more firepower, and I think that this team can definitely contend for that Big 12 title, at least the tournament. I think over the course of the season, they'll do very well as well. And then you find yourself in the tournament, the big tournament, the NCAA March Madness tournament, in a much better position, in my opinion. I think, obviously the play-in game, it's exciting, and you make the tournament because of this one game and all of that. But you're also adding another game to your belt where uh, the teams that aren't in the play-in or in the first four, or whatever you want to call it, they just get a little bit of extra rest. And so those games add up, as we saw very much prominently with the men's team. And we'll talk about that in the third segment. But you don't want to be playing in that playing game is what I'm saying. So if you can get a better seed, you're facing worse competition early on, which is what you want, and you're not playing an extra game. I think Iowa State can get that done with the roster that they have right now. I don't know if they're done in the portal. I can't guarantee that. I don't have that answer. I haven't really been connected on the inside there, but I do think that where this roster is right now, this is a really good spot to be in. Obviously, like I said, Audie and Addie, that duo was electric last year. Kind of was the engine that kept that truck going, right? There was definitely nights where if you didn't get Audie or Addie, Iowa State was going to be in trouble. And there were nights where kind of had to count on one or the other, just depending on the matchup. Like, we're going to probably need 25 or maybe more from you tonight, and we're going to be in this. I kept talking about all season, this team needs to somehow spread these points out. When they do that, they win games. But there were a lot of games, too, where Addie would go for 35, and maybe Audie would have another 15. And so that totals out to what, 50? And they ended up scoring like 62. So 12 points comes from the rest of the bench. I think if you have those two on the team and you've got two players that are just going to crank the intensity up and play like their life depends on it, you're going to get at least more impact there if it's not in the form of points. And the other side of that too is when they turn up that intensity, everybody on the team is going to feel that, because it's not just in the games, right? This is practice to practice. This is how this team functions, how they interact with each other. All of that goes into kind of the team that gets wheeled out there on game day. And if the vibes are more intense, I mean, I guess I can't say that guarantees you wins, but I feel like that's where I'd rather the team be than like laid back and just, all right, well, we've got a game today. Let's see how it goes. Like, from what I've seen of on the court play from Paulk and Williams, I think that's going to be a total vibe shift for Iowa State. And I think it's a shift in the right direction. I think that this team can win a lot of games next year from the actual play on the court, of course, but also from just the mentality around it. Not to say that they had a terrible mentality this last season. It's just a different one. And I think that it's a great, you can shift in a good way or in a bad way. I think it's a good shift. And obviously the play on the court, I think this team is in a very, very good spot. Let's pivot away from women's basketball and talk a little bit about some football news that broke over the weekend. Very interesting. Can't say I saw it coming, and honestly can't wait to talk about it. Coming up right after this. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Big news over the weekend for Iowa State football, and it's not exactly what I think a lot of people wanted to hear. It is kind of in the past as well. You're here with Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the NCAA has taken disciplinary action against 5 current or former Iowa State football support staff members for making bets on games involving the Cyclones. Predominantly, it seems like it's men's and women's basketball games involving the Cyclones. I think this is the same investigation from what I'm gathering. Obviously, as do we really need to? Obviously, we lost our quarterback in that situation. I think this is that same investigation, and they found Jace Heacock, Chase Clark, Michael Dreyer, Kyle Hyland, and Mason Williams. They acknowledged they knowingly violated NCAA sports wagering bylaws and are subject to a 1-year show clause order through April 24th, 2026. I don't think we need to dive into each one of these guys' bios and what they do and what not, because really what this is to me, it's a little bit of a reminder because Decker's, making it potentially go into the NFL and all of that was going on with John Gruden and all of that was really neat. And it was kind of like, oh, hey, remember when that happened? But outside of that, I don't feel like I've spent every waking moment thinking about this, since it happened, since it came out. I think this is a good reminder, if not for us fans, because it's not really important. Like we can wager on Iowa State athletics, for the players in the building, because this is it's not really a joke. Like this, they'll get you and then you're done. Like it's going to make it very hard to move up. And it's such a, in my opinion, kind of silly thing. Like I don't know all the exact rules, but I know from what I've heard from other like former players and stuff, like it's very clear. These are the rules. Just don't do it. They've got, I mean, you're not going to get past them. You're just not. And so this kind of coming up, I don't think this directly affects Iowa State unless they were to, I suppose, hire one of these 5 guys back, because from what I'm reading, they don't work for Iowa State, unless Heacock maybe does, because he's the son of defensive coordinator John Heacock. But I don't think he is. And everyone else has a job somewhere else, it looks like. So unless they come back, it wouldn't affect Iowa State directly, which I suppose is good news. You don't want noise around the team, and that's another angle too. Is like this is just more unnecessary noise and distraction around Iowa State. It doesn't help the brand, that's for sure. It's not something I really was like excited to come and talk about. I didn't make it the headline because it's not a good thing for Iowa State, but I think it's worth at least mentioning. These numbers are always a little staggering. I don't know where do I find that amount of money to be able to wager. They always say don't bet what you can afford to lose. Like, whew, I would love to be able to lose that much money. So I just look at this and I immediately think this is a great reminder. There are consequences for these kinds of actions. I think we have a very good football team this coming year. I know we've spoken with people who don't necessarily think the same thing. I think that's wild. I think this team is absolutely a Big 12 title contender, and probably a legitimate college football playoff, at least threat. Maybe not the top dog, but when you get into the dance at 0-0, anything can happen. And it would really stink if we ran into another situation like this, and we lost, maybe the whole, this is a complete hypothetical. I'll make this very clear. What if the whole tight end room is all like, yeah, what if we put some bets down on the men's basketball game this weekend, and then we don't have any tight ends? Like, we can't have that because they'll get you and they'll move pretty quickly. Everything's geo-fenced and everything is tracked to the second. And this is exactly the proof of it right here. The proof is in the pudding. And I don't know exactly what these guys will have a no face clause or whatever it is. It's very interesting. I'm not because it's from the NCAA. I don't believe it's through the courts is what I'm reading here. The NCAA made these disciplinary actions, um, and I guess that's good as far as image for Iowa State. But at the end of the day, this stinks that this is coming out, and this is more news for Iowa State and the whole gambling thing. They face no criminal charges. There it is. Okay, that's what I was looking for. Um, but I think we got to move past this because there's just no reason for any of this to be going on. Like I said, this team's too good, and I do think that this team. Uh, I think that the way the program is now with the culture, this isn't going to happen. And I think that this was a very big learning experience. They say a loss is only a loss if you don't learn from it. Like kind of the same thing here. I think because it happened in our building, there's a much more significant kind of emphasis on this is what can happen, which I suppose that's a bright side, right? If this happens at just some random group of five school and it makes the news, of course, and everybody talks about it, and then it's just kind of like a side point in the spring meetings and the fall training camps and all that. Like, hey guys, remember, don't do this. No, it happened in the building, which isn't great, but at least now there's like, remember when this happened like 3 years ago? Yeah, let's not do that again. They're going to spend a few minutes talking about it. I'm sure that they make it very, very clear, and that they've seen the effects firsthand is what I'm trying to say here. And so that's obviously going to be a little bit more of a wake up call for these guys that, maybe they're thinking about how much they want to or whatever. But then they can think of the guy they know that directly felt the implications of that, the consequences of making those actions. And then they hopefully don't do it. And Iowa State doesn't have to deal with this anymore. So 5 more, I guess, current or former Iowa State football support staff members face disciplinary action from the NCAA. Never great when I have to say that sentence. But I do think that the team now is almost somehow better for it because it's not those guys, right? They're learning from those actions, which is good news because this team is so good. And we've talked about it a ton and we'll continue to talk about all offseason. I think this team is legit. Like they really could make a run at some legendary numbers this year. Just need to see it and need everyone out on the field. So how do you do that? Well, let's start with not gambling on things that we probably shouldn't, and therefore we can get you on the field, at least avoiding NCAA disciplinary action. So not a super fun topic there. Glad we at least talked about it. It's something that happened in Iowa State news. But let's pivot away from this and into a feel-good story because Cade Kelderman is on scholarship, and we're talking about it coming right after this. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery, and now I budget smarter and save more. And my favorite kind of feature here is that managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. So Iowa State gets another dude on scholarship on the men's basketball side of things here. Talking about it at Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Cade Kelderman stepped up late last season for the Cyclones, and he is reaping the benefits of that now. He is now on scholarship, spent the first 2 seasons as a walk-on. Obviously, Keyshawn Gilbert and that whole injury situation we faced last year meant that Kelderman got some big minutes and played in some very big games. And he earned this scholarship, which is always a feel good story. I'm going to mention his statistics, but I don't think that these matter. Over 2024-25, averaged just under a point at 0.7, 0.3 rebounds, 0.7 assists, and shot 36.4%. Obviously, there's going to be people that are going to look at that and say, "This, why are we doing this?" I don't think that that's fair to Cade. I think Cade has worked his butt off from the inside, absolutely given his all to the program, and I think that that's kind of what this this team's about. You know, the way that Otts runs things. I feel like he is very much you. You put the work in every single day, you'll be rewarded for it. And we saw it directly with kind of the injury to Keyshawn Gilbert. Who's going to step up? Cade Kelderman comes in, played 6 minutes against Ole Miss in the loss there. That's unfortunate. I thought he would have played more minutes there. Didn't, but he did play 18 minutes against Lipscomb and BYU. Had 33% from the floor shooting against BYU. Shot a little bit better against Lipscomb at 50%. Never really turned any any heads as far as points goes. 2 of 4, 1 of 3. Did go 1 of 1 against Jackson State in early December. So 100% that evening. Obviously, that's going to stand out. But overall, his season high was 5 against Lipscomb, 2 of 4, 1 of 2 from 3. But to me, this isn't about what he actually did on the floor as much as it's like this guy came in as a walk-on, worked extremely hard every single day in, day out, the daily habits that Otts talks about. And then he gets thrown into this lineup with a team that had such high expectations, a team that everyone was looking to kind of break through what Iowa State has been in the past. Just everyone was scrutinizing this team, especially late in the season. And honestly, myself included, I tried to stay as positive as I could. But by the end there, we were just dropping games left and right. And there was so many question marks of like, who is this team really? Because, in early January, I thought this was a Final Four team for sure, probably a bounce away from a national title contender. And now we're like, what is a realistic expectation going into March Madness? Is it a Sweet 16 appearance? Because they didn't make it that far. So with all of that, it felt like negative energy around the team. For him to go out and play as hard as he did is I'm not going to say as well as he did, but I feel like he really, really worked hard out there. Because like, what about Taman Lipsy? He's putting a better number than this, of course, but it's not like he's putting up 30-point games either. That's just not his role. And so Cade Kelderman played his role, I thought, as best he could, came in a very tough situation and kind of showed like all the work I've been putting in over the last few years, it's paying off. Like I am here I'm going to give it all that I can to this team right here, right now on this floor. And I think that that's a great thing to be rewarded with. Now, I don't know how this works with the rev share because I think we have like unlimited scholarships now, but they take out of the rev share NIL deal. I don't know if this is a move that's made in, kind of like we don't know what's coming on, I think it's July 1. And so I'm just glad that he was able to get on scholarship. I think that's at the end of the day what's important here because I think he earned it. Now, I know there are going to be people that say the points aren't there, the assists aren't there. I just don't really care. To me, that's not what this is about at all. And this is indicative of the way Otts runs his program and the new vibe or the new culture that Iowa State is now. You're rewarded for coming in every single day, getting the treatment, getting the food in right, getting the sleep at night. I don't know how many other words that rhyme with night. That was on accident. But this is, if you're able to come in and do this and do this and do this, like the wins will come. That's kind of what I feel like Otts is his mentality is like, if we just do everything right, all the little things they'll add up to the big things. If we can just do everything right every single day, or I guess I don't know if he even wants everything right, just good effort every single day, the wins will come. The points will come. The shots will fall eventually. That's what we do all this work for. And I think Cade Kelderman kind of embodies that. And for him to get the scholarship makes complete sense to me. I do think that the way that this team is set up, I don't know how much he'll be playing next year. I don't have that. I just don't know. There's a chance, with more experience from this season, that he is a more readily available, maybe seventh man, eighth man, whatever. And I would like to see potentially Otts go with that and kind of give those starters a little bit more rest throughout the season, if possible. If Cade has shown that he's able to come in and at least kind of hold off the other team, like we don't need 30 points from Cade, but maybe a steal, couple points, couple assists, dish it out. Maybe assist, like a hockey style, like get it to him who's going to there. Just hold the other team off for 5-7 minutes, and then we'll put back in whoever ends up, if it's Mason Williams or whatever the case is. I think that's a great spot for the team, just because we saw so many injuries affect last year's team. And I know that I don't think Otts is going to change his mentality. I think they're going to try to win every game by 100, especially early in the season, and then they'll kind of deal with things as they come up. I think that's kind of his mentality. So I don't know if that's really what's going to happen here, but I think that the previous experience that Kelderman gained this last season at least puts him in a position to play that role if Otts wants that to be how they approach the season. If they're up 40 against Jackson State, is just the one that I just read. It's off the top of my head. No hate, but do we really need to be playing our starters, whoever they are? I'm not going to name just because I don't know. Let's throw in someone off the bench and just keep those minutes at a tolerable level, and then they can get more game experience for down the line. I think that that's a role that Kelderman can absolutely fill. And shoot, I mean, he was kind of like the guy at the end of the season. Now the numbers, in my opinion, just aren't there for him to come into this next season as point guard one, or shooting guard one, or whatever it is. In my opinion, I mean, you can make a jump from season to season, so he very well could, but just based off what I saw last year, I don't think that's where he's at. But I do think he could be that depth position, or play that depth role that I think personally could help this team. Now, what do I know? And is that something that Otts wants to do from a mentality standpoint? I get it if not. But at the end of the day, personally, I would be okay with that. I think that we should maybe explore that. But I guess there's a reason that I'm sitting here and they're out there on the hardwood. So I get that as well. Thank you guys for listening to this point. Happy Monday. Let's have a great week here. Be sure to hit subscribe so we can prove it's a Cyclones stay once and for all. Completely free. Completely free. I don't know if you knew that. I'm Nick Marvitz, and Cyclone fans, until next time, sayonara.